I can't put it down, it's my new addiction. It's all in my head, but I want non-fiction. I don't like the world, but I like fantasy. Fairies, fucking girls, and they're pretty. Hailey, do you like to read? I wrote this so you'd sleep with me. It's like 199 degrees when I go to the smart hut, S-M-U-T-H-U-T. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, peen. Big fat tit stick in between. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Draco fucked Hermione. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Draco fucked Hermione. I wake up alone staring at my ceiling. I try not to care, so I just start reading. Sits in the cup chair, he watches me finish. He just likes to stare, and my god, he's British. Jobs to satisfy his needs. Those man bets I just wanna squeeze. Feels like I'm gonna sneeze. Squid isn't pee-pee, won't somebody breed me? S-M-U-T-H-U-T. All this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Throbbing, swelling, pulsing, peen. Big fat tit stick in between. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Draco fucked Hermione. S-M-U-T-H-U-T. Draco fucked Hermione. Yes, he did. He fucked her real nice. Yes, he did. He fucked her twice. Yes, he did. He fucked her a lot. He fucked in the shed and he fucked in the smart babe. Sorry about that.
Hello everybody. I just want you to know, if you're watching on YouTube, today is actually a miracle. We have started the Good Girls Club at before 3 a.m. We have started the Good Girls Club before 3 a.m. It is currently 12:44. It's a miracle. And I am not brain pudding. So this is a rare live reading of Manacled for the first time, I think, in months. So welcome in everybody to the Good Girls Club. Today we are reading chapters, I think it's 69. 69. Hold on, let me double check. We are reading chapters 68 and 69. It is a first, Andy. It's actually like legitimately a first, I think. So we're reading only 2 chapters for going forward. This is the last live reading we will be doing until after we get back from Europe. Europe. I'm just gonna say Europe. So this is the last live reading until we get back from Europe. There will be 2 episodes after this so you'll get 4 chapters while we're gone. There'll be 2 episodes dropped each Saturday that we're gone. Not this first Saturday we're gone, because it'll only be like a day at that point. But it'll be the following 2. But it'll all be on the calendar. But I'm very excited. We are deep into Manacled now. We are extremely deep into Manacled now. That's a great suggestion, Chico. Something we could definitely talk about for future Smutty Saturdays, I think. But before we get going, let me read the trigger warnings. Let me read all the things. So this book is a fan fiction dark romance surrounding Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter. The trigger warnings are extensive. Again, trigger warnings, they are rape, mutilation, forced marriage, degradation, forced breeding, death, war, and suicide. Viewer discretion is advised. Please heed the warning. So we are extremely deep into the story at this point. We are like, honestly, I think we're past booby deep. We're like clavicles deep at this point. Volume 1, 2, and 3 we have read. We have read, I just want a visual representation. This much. Look, if you are not someone who reads, if you're not somebody who's a reader, I want you to know, if you've stuck around, this is how much you've endured and listen to. So you're a reader, okay? This is humongous. So pat yourselves on the ussy because you've read that much, okay? So where are we in the world? So I'm going to do a little synopsis again. It's sort of hard to summarize essentially like 2 novels and a half of a third, but In volume 1, we start the story with Hermione is being held in a dungeon under Hogwarts in sensory deprivation for 16 months. During that time, she occludes very precious memories that we find out are of her time with Draco. Some people were DMing me about that. Yes, the memories that she suppressed, it's mostly about Draco, but it's also things like Ginny's pregnancy, things like that. That was also a suppressed memory that she protected. So there are things like that that were also roped in the Draco memory suppression. So basically, she is pulled out of sensory deprivation. And she's thrown into this breeding program, which is a farce. It's a lie. It's just basically like propaganda to perpetuate pure-blooded lineage, but it's really not. Voldemort's dying, and he's using this terrible, like, Handmaid's Tale-esque breeding program to disguise the fact that he's actually dying, okay? And she is brainwashed during that time, along with 76 other witches. She's brainwashed and put magical manacles on her wrists that are blood bound to the High Reef. Oh, sorry. I was spoiled. The High Reef. And they are bloodbound to the High Reef, and they're bloodbound to her as well. And so she can't perform magic. She can't do anything but obey. These are very important. The manacles are very important. That's why it's fucking called Manacled, okay? And she's then whisked away to go to the High Reef. We find out is Draco Malfoy. Draco Malfoy rose up in the ranks to become the right-hand man of Voldemort. During her time at Malfoy Manor, shit gets fucked. She's having severe PTSD from her time in sensory deprivation. Her memories have been occluded. She is also being routinely raped by Draco Malfoy in the hopes that she will get pregnant by him, and then the magical pregnancy will bust open all of the memories that she's occluded, which is exactly what happened. She does end up getting pregnant. We find out it's a little girl. She does end up getting pregnant. Her memories bust open, and volume 2 starts. Volume 2, which is the largest of the 3 volumes, is all of the flashbacks pouring back into her. So during that time, we find out that Draco presents himself to the Order of Phoenix and goes, hey, I want to be a turncoat like Snape. I want to be a double agent. But all I ask is for Hermione now and after the immunity, and Hermione now and after the war. We don't know his motivation. We don't know why he wants to do this all of a sudden. We don't know why he wants Hermione. But what we do find out over time is that he hates Voldemort. I mean, he hates the Death Eaters. He hates this war. He hates everything. He hates it. He rose in the ranks so that when he assumed Hermione would betray him, his death would create the largest vacuum possible, and the Death Eaters could topple over if Draco died. So we also find out during that time, why did he turncoat? Because his mom, Narcissa, was raped and tortured for months on end. The only way for her to be released under Voldemort's clutches is if he took the Dark Mark and murdered Dumbledore. And even then, it wasn't enough. Voldemort stuck around, continued to torture her, and then she eventually died anyways. So he is very patient. I think that a lot of people think vengeance has to be immediate. Like, you immediately have to do a blowback. Draco is not that person. Neither is Hermione. They are basically the two sides of the same fucking coin, okay? And he is very patient. He knew he was going to try to strike Voldemort. He knew that he was going to do something, but he had to bide his time, plan accordingly. He chose Hermione not because he actually wanted her, not because he wanted to rape her or have sex with her or do anything with her. He honestly just didn't want his liaison to constantly keep being replaced because they kept getting murdered if they were field fighters. So he chose somebody he thought would be important enough to the order that they wouldn't just kill her if she became an issue or whatever, or that she wasn't constantly in the fray. And that's the only reason why he chose her. Everything else that happened was under Hermione's manipulation of him. Hermione was told by Moody and Kingsley that she needs to bring Draco Malfoy to heal. And what did she do? She needed to make him need her. So she found books on how to weasel her way into his heart. Wrote books. Good night, Sophia. Wrote books and notes and studied and manipulated her little smart cutie butt into his heart so that he fucking fell in love with her, okay? And this is a trope that happens in dark romances a lot, where he fell first, or she fell first, he fell harder, or vice versa. This is really what happened with them. Like, he fell in love with her first, but she fell real hard right after. I think she didn't even let herself fall for him until she knew he got him to heal, which is also fucked in and of itself, by the way. But anyways, so they're like two vipers poised to strike. And during this time, they do genuinely find a very complicated, dark romance together. It's not pretty, it's not clean, it's not simple, it's anything but they do fall in love in their own warped, war-ridden, children of war way. They love each other. And what ends up happening at the end of volume 2, which is very important, is that Hermione swears she will leave Europe if Draco gets Ginny out of the prison camp that she has been imprisoned in after Harry's death. He goes, all right, bitch, I'll get Ginny, but you need to get the fuck out after I go get her. And Hermione swears that she will. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go to the prison camp and I'm going to get Ginny. And then you're going to leave with her, right? And so he goes and he blows his cover to save Ginny. He gets back to Whitecroft, and then Hermione goes, you go ahead with Ginny. I'll be waiting for you. You go. You can't take us both. Go take Ginny somewhere safe. You're going to have to, apparate several times. Go. And then come back and get me. And he's like, you promise? And she's like, yeah. And so he listens to her and he goes. And Hermione, because no matter what you want to say, Hermione fucking loves this man very deeply. And as protective as he is of her, she is of him. She then leaves him a note saying, I love you. She goes to the prison camp, takes on almost all the Death Eaters of all of Great Britain, destroying them with a dragon-shaped fire. Kills countless hags, werewolves, other wizards, Death Eaters. Blows up the fucking the camp. Kills Dolivar, which is like the scientist who's performing all these horrific curses on the good guys. But she gets captured, and her capture, she gets put into a cage. She then watches all the Weasleys get absolutely fucking curb stomped and murdered. She watches Lupin get tortured and murdered, Tonks get murdered, Minerva get murdered, everybody. And then she ends up at the bottom of Hogwarts in the dungeon, and that's where she occludes the memories of Draco. And he knew she was alive because of their rings that they both wear. He knew she was alive, but he could not find her. And he did everything he could for 16 months, every minute of the day, every night, him and Snape looking for her. And now we're in volume 3. So we're in volume 3, and we're really at the fallout of her memories coming back and of what they're going to do now, because they have fucking been through it. Brady, yeah, there's a lot to go through. Sorry. There's a lot to go through. It's hard to summarize. So now we're in volume 3, and essentially where we're at is, what do they do now? How do they get to a place where they can fix all of the damage? And there is a lot of damage done. She's pregnant. She's slowly remembering. And really, they are not glossing over all of this. But the big thing so far of just volume 3 is, the big thing for volume 3 is that Draco cannot take Hermione breaking promises anymore, because she breaks them all the fucking time. And he's like, I can't take it anymore. Every time you break a promise, you just send us in a cataclysmic horror. Like, what else can we endure at this point for your broken promises? And that's really where we're at for volume 3. So here we go. We are going to be reading chapter 68 and 69 as we work our way through volume 3. without further ado, here we go. Chapter 68. Hermione stared wide-eyed as the silhouette of Lucius filled the entrance to the hallway. His eyes swept along the walls and alighted at the spot where Hermione was huddled. He stared at her for a moment before beginning to stalk forward slowly. Draco appeared beside his father. She's thinking to herself, Don't blow your cover. Don't blow your cover, Draco. Hermione repeated the thought in her head like a mantra as Lucius closed in on her. Lucius felt like a dragon in human skin. He moved down the hall towards Hermione with an indirect and sinuous pace, like a serpent, as though he were daring her to run. His eyes were bright and glittering as he closed in. You recall the repopulation program? I'm required to keep a surrogate. I didn't mention my impending fatherhood. Draco's expression was cold but intent as he eyed Hermione. He moved his head faintly as though to warn her not to move. Ah, yes, the mudblood that the Daily Prophet wrote about. I'd forgotten she was here. He stood mere inches away from Hermione as he looked her over. The dark magic hung around him like a cloak, and it caused her stomach to roil as her body broke out in a cold sweat. She pressed herself more tightly back against the wall. Lucius prodded her head back with his wand until her eyes met his. His pupils were blown wide. There was only a shard of silver encircling them. A little mouse caught in a serpent's nest. Hermione felt her robe shift as Lucius' hand slid along her body. Do you enjoy her, Draco? Does the commonness appeal to you? I imagine after so many years of being forbidden, there must be a novelty in exploring a mudblood's filth. It would explain why your wife has wandered so far from her marriage bed. Did your little toy make you crave things a pure-blood wife would have better breeding than to indulge? Lucius's voice dropped into a predatory purr as he drew closer to Hermione. He smelled of cardamom and leather, but it was masked beneath a coppery, faded scent of old blood. Hermione's tongue curdled and her throat contracted as she tried to swallow. Let's see what assets you have to keep my son in Britain while his wife entertains in France. She's thinking, don't blow your cover. Don't blow your cover. She felt the buttons of her bust come undone. She shook imperceptibly, and a small whimper almost escaped her. But she kept it in. Her eyes sought out Draco, trying to warn him off. He was standing, frozen behind his father, his eyes burning with rage. Don't. Lucius's hand closed around her throat, and he gave a low, shaking laugh. It wasn't short. The laughter continued on and on rather than stopping. Every time Hermione thought he might stop, he continued his low, relentless, mirthless noise. His fingers were still wrapped around her neck as though he might snap it, and she felt every vibration. Why, Draco, he finally said, glancing over his shoulder. She's attached to you. Draco's expression instantly curved into a cruel, gloating smirk as he met Lucius's gaze. Yes, she is. He reached past Lucius, took hold of Hermione's arm, and pulled her firmly out of his father's grasp. Draco glanced at her before looking back to his father. Past torture left her unstable and caused rather extensive memory loss. The Dark Lord has a particular interest in the information he believes she possesses. He wants her kept safe here at the manor until I can extract it. He gave a thin smile. It only took a few months and she's grown quite attached to her captor. I'm all she has in the world. He stared intently down at Hermione and smirked. Aren't I, mudblood? Hermione didn't need to feign the way her jaw trembled or the rapidly increasing speed at which her chest was starting to hitch as she gave a small nod. Her hand was shaking as it rose up, and she pulled her dress closed. Draco looked down at her, his mouth twisted derisively. Calm down and breathe. My father is hardly going to find someone like you worth looking at. Lucius was watching with avid amusement. She forced herself to remember it as she met Draco's vicious gaze and felt herself shriveling inside. She generally keeps to her room aside her daily walk. She must have been pining after me to have wandered so far. Draco's lips curled. His expression grew cold as he eyed his father. The Dark Lord does not want her tampered with by anyone, regardless of how amusing it may be. There are strict rules regarding the surrogates. Maintaining her and recovering the memory she lost is regarded as paramount. You'll excuse me, I have to take her back to her room in order to assure she doesn't have a mental breakdown somewhere along the way. Draco started to pull Hermione down the hall, but then paused and looked back at Lucius. Your wing of the manor has been maintained. I believe Astoria redecorated at some point last year. Come, mudblood. He dragged Hermione forcefully down the hallway, moving so rapidly she could barely keep on her feet as she clutched her dress, clothes, and tried to breathe. She glanced over her shoulder and saw Lucius watching them depart, an unreadable expression on his face. As soon as they got into the north wing, Draco stopped and pulled her tightly into his arms. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He turned her face upward so he could look at her. His hands was warm against her skin as he studied her face, brushing her hair back from her eyes. He arrived without any warning. Are you all right? I'm so sorry. I'm fine, I'm fine. Hermione forced out the words as her chest kept spasming and she struggled not to start crying. I was just afraid he was going to do something and you'd blow your cover. Draco's hand slid possessively into her hair at the base of her head as he pulled her closer. He won't go near you. I will kill him if he ever touches you again. I'll tell the Dark Lord he snapped and I had no choice. Hermione buried her face into Draco's robes and squeezed her eyes closed. She'd been doing so well. She'd been staying calm. She hadn't panicked in days. But now she felt as though her legs had been violently kicked out from beneath her. Draco gave a sharp, angry sigh. Of all the time for the Dark Lord to recall him. Hermione swallowed and looked up. He's here to track down the person responsible for destroying the Horcrux, isn't he? The Last Order member. That's what he said. Draco was silent for several damning seconds as his eyes met hers. He is, he finally said, his jaw dripping slightly. He reached out gently and rebuttoned her dress. The Dark Lord has been disappointed by my failure to apprehend the person responsible. He recalled my father to Britain to reassign the task. Hermione's throat went dry. What? What does that mean? The corner of his mouth quirked, and his fingers rose up and ghosted across her cheek. I don't imagine he'll find anything before you leave. It will hardly matter after that. You'll stay in your room. It will not be for long. Hermione flinched and shook her head. I have things I need to look for in the library. I was waiting for you because I had an idea. Hermione? He cut her off with a hard voice and his hand withdrew. My father will be living in the manor for the foreseeable future. It's hardly a coincidence he was recalled now once Dark Lord no longer has your memories to use. I'll accompany you for your walks. I can excuse it as being medically necessary. However, my father both is unstable and unpredictable. He cannot be trusted or expected to follow the Dark Lord's instructions reliably when he gets an idea in his head. Anything he sees, the Dark Lord may see. Hermione swallowed and tried to speak. Draco gave a low sigh and his shoulders dropped. I'm sorry. I'm truly so sorry. I'll bring you books to you. I know that's not what you want. If I could do better, I would. He stared across the hall for a moment. I'll take you to your room now. Then I should go. I can't appear to be spending my time with you any longer. Hermione's heart felt like lead as she followed him through the halls and watched as he inspected and tested the wards on her rooms for several minutes before leaving. Lucius's presence in the manor felt like poison in the air. Narcissa was wan and skittish in her portrait, but she continued her constant vigil over Hermione. Topsy appeared in the evening, her hands covered in burns and her head bruised purple across the forehead, the skin split in multiple locations. "What happened?" Hermione asked, horrified as she lightly held the tiny wizened hands in hers and looked at the damage. Topsy withdrew her hands and concealed them behind her back. "Master Lucius is not liking the redecoration of the South Wing. He is ordering all the elves to be punished," Topsy said, averting her eyes. But he's not your master anymore. Draco is the lord of the estate now." Topsy looked up at Hermione with her enormous eyes. "Elves is tied to the magic. Master Lucius is still being a Malfoy." Hermione let out a sharp breath. "But Draco supersedes him. If Draco says not to, a house elf highest law is their master's bidding. You shouldn't have to punish yourself if Draco says not to. Why didn't he tell you not to?" Topsy shifted and rubbed a foot against her leg. "The house elves is not to be doing nothing that would be making Master Lucius think Master Draco is not liking to be a Death Eater. Master Draco must always be most loyal son to Master Lucius, who is very much liking to be a Death Eater. That is most important." "What did he do to you?" Hermione said, drawing Topsy's hand from behind her back. They were blistered and raw. "Topsy was to iron her hands for 1 minute each and strike herself 10 times with a cold bucket." Topsy twitched a bony shoulder. "Topsy is being all right. Master Lucius is never liking elves. Topsy is used to it from the years ago." Hermione's throat felt thick, and her eyes burned as she swallowed. "I wish I could heal you." Her mouth twisted. "I used to be a healer back when I had magic." "Do you have potions? I have some Murtlap essence. It's not very much, but it will soothe the burns and help the bruising." Topsy patted Hermione gently on the cheek. "The elves is having potions, but if we use them too soon, Master Lucius is wanting to punish us again." Draco was visibly pale and tense when he came to her room later that night. He walked rapidly across the room, held her face in his hands, and studied her eyes the way he used to during the war. "I made it clear to him that you're pregnant and that the Dark Lord is using it as a mechanism to recover your memories," he said after a moment. "I don't imagine he'd hesitate to harm you despite the rules regarding surrogates, but Dark Lord's specific interest in the pregnancy will hopefully be enough." Hermione raised her hand to his cheek. He was worryingly cool to the touch. "What did you do, Draco?" He shrugged her hand off. "I added a few more wards. I want to know if he tries to access the North Wings. It would raise his suspicion if I kept him out entirely, but I can slow him enough to get here first." "You used blood magic, didn't you? You look ready to faint." She pulled him towards the bed. "Sit down. Topsy, I need a blood replenishing potion. I'm sure you have them." She pressed her fingertips against his pulse. "And a strengthening potion." She pulled his wand out of its holster on his arm and slipped it into his hand. "Cast a diagnostic for me. I need to know how much blood you've used." He waved his wand and she studied the results carefully. When Topsy reappeared, Hermione asked for several restoratives. She watched him carefully as he took the potions, and the color slowly did return to his features. She pressed her hands against his cheek and felt the warmth seep back into his skin as she pressed her lips against his forehead. "I won't go out of my room without you. You don't need to worry." His shoulders slumped with exhaustion, and he gave a slow nod. Draco arrived after lunch for her daily walk. As they stood at the doorway of her room, she looked at his hands. "I suppose we shouldn't touch anymore. Just walk like we used to last winter?" He nodded, his expression tense. They walked through the rose garden. The buds were just starting to bloom. As they came around the side of the manor, they both froze. There was a wide trail of blood leading from iron gates of the estate. The white gravel was soaked in it. Lucius stood at the front doors of the manor with a centaur at his feet. The centaur had been struck in the torso with a necrosis curse. The rot was slowly spreading across the stomach. The tendons in every leg had been brutally severed. The centaur was moaning quietly and kept struggling to stand, his skin gray from blood loss. The centaur tried to push himself up from his knees and collapsed heavily to the ground with an agonized groan. Lucius was dressed in leather and dripping in blood. His pale hair was stained red. "Ah, Draco, I had hoped you were here. Put your mudblood away. If you could change the wards to allow me to take captives directly to my wing, that would be useful. Then I won't need to be obliged to drag them across the entire estate." "Setting up a zoo, father?" Draco stood surveying the scene with a carefully closed expression. Lucius snorted. "This beast came from the forbidden forest. I'm sure it knows something about where the arrow came from, or if it doesn't, it can tell me who does." Hermione's chest contracted painfully as Lucius continued. "Unfortunately, they're such uncooperative creatures. I expect the process will require persuasion." Draco sighed and raised an eyebrow. "There are prisons you can interrogate in. It keeps the blood off the gravel." "Ah, yes," Lucius said, waving his wand in lazy circles. His voice became vaguely sing-song. The prisons full of guards and ambitious Death Eaters eager to see our family toppled. The prisons, perhaps if you were more careful, you would have apprehended our quarry by now. Why should I use a prison when I have my very own redecorated wing of the manor? No, the manor will do very well. It's been so long since I've been home. Now, Draco, perhaps you could be so good as to transport my project the rest of the way. Unless you prefer, I drag it through the halls as well." There was a pause as Draco stood between Hermione and his father. "Topsy," Draco called, his voice hard. Topsy appeared before Draco with a pop. Her bruises had faded to yellow and green. "Take the mudblood back to her room and see that she stays there." Draco unbuttoned the cuffs of his sleeves and rolled them up. "I have more important matters to attend to." Topsy bobbed and took Hermione's hand, leading her quickly away. Hermione glanced over her shoulder and watched Draco walk towards his father, his wand dangling from his fingertips. Hermione had been in her room only a half an hour when the screaming started. Even from the other end of the manor, the sound was audible. Inhuman agony reverberated through the house as though it were emerging from the walls. Narcissa started violently, jumping to her feet, her face turning gray as she gave a choked gasp of horror. It was the first sound Hermione had ever heard from the portrait. It's a centaur," Hermione said. Lucius caught it. Narcissa stared at Hermione for a moment and then dropped back into her chair, her hands falling into her lap. The screaming kept going on and on. Hermione looked away and tried to swallow, but her saliva was sour. Her hands were shaking as she tried to turn the page in her book. The words swam before her eyes. She wondered if it was a flaying curse. The way the screaming continued on and on reminded her of Colin. The book slipped from her fingers and onto the floor. She barely even noticed. She wished she had her occlumency, or at least the ability to put her mind back together so that all the deaths didn't stay so at the forefront. She pressed her hands over her eyes and tried to clear her mind. All the blood. There would be so much blood and skin and muscle. Eventually organs. Layer after layer. All the way to the bones. She wanted to go huddle in the corner of her room, to hide from the sound and the knowledge that it was happening, and she had no ability to do anything about it. If she tried to do anything, tried to go and beg Draco to stop it, it would endanger him, her, their daughter, Severus, Ginny, James. She started across the room towards the corner, trying not to listen to the screaming that just wouldn't stop. As she went, she glanced towards the portrait. Narcissa's expression kept flinching, as though she were trying not to cry as she sat stoically in her chair. Hermione stopped and hesitated for a moment before stepping towards the portrait. Hermione extended her hand. Her fingers spasmed as she rested them against the canvas. Narcissa looked up at Hermione, and her expression was stiff, her nose scrunched up and her lip curled defensively as she drew back in her chair. But Hermione waited. Then Narcissa's blue eyes flickered, and her mouth twisted as her jaw trembled. She moved to the edge of her chair and extended her hand until her painted fingers rested on the canvas beneath Hermione's. Hermione stood at the portrait until the screaming stopped. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Once the manor fell silent, Hermione's hand slipped away from the frame, and she turned away. Her stomach felt so twisted, it was as though she was being strangled from the inside. She made her way dazedly over to the bed and stood beside it for several minutes. She could still hear the screams, as though they were tattooed into her eardrums. She curled up tightly in the corner between the bed and the wall and stared blankly at the floor. She blinked and found Draco kneeling in front of her. His expression was hesitant and worried, his eyebrows furrowed as he studied her, his mouth set in a thin, flat line. He was wearing different clothes, and she could tell he'd showered. His hair was combed back and still damp. She stared at him in silence. She didn't know what to say. His expression grew more and more drawn as he met her eyes. He didn't reach towards her. He didn't speak. They simply looked at each other and felt the weight of it all. He seemed to be waiting for her to initiate something, to reach for him or to look away. Did it say anything that could incriminate you? Hermione finally asked. Draco's eye flickered and she saw his knuckles whiten. No. I covered my tracks already. Hermione's mouth twitched and she gave a small nod. This is in her mind. Everything you do is on my head too. Every spell. It's late. Will you eat tonight? Draco asked, studying her. Hermione looked over at the clock. It had been early afternoon when Draco had taken her outside. Now it was 7 o'clock. She lost the whole day. She hadn't made any progress in her research. She hadn't even brainstormed. She just stood in cold horror in front of a portrait and listened as a centaur was tortured to death. She never managed to do anything. Not before her memory returned, not after. She was just a shadow of the person she'd been before. Like the portrait of Narcissa that hung on the wall. She was just a scarred shadow of someone Draco loved. Her jaw trembled. Hermione? She looked back at Draco. His expression was devastated as he watched her. He started to reach for her, but then stopped and withdrew his hand. Will you eat? She pressed her lips together and shook her head. His eyes flickered, but he looked unsurprised. He stood up, glancing away from her. I'll send Dreamless sleep. My father is expecting me to go to dinner tonight. Let Topsy know if you need anything, okay? That was all he said before he left. She should research more. It was what she should do. She didn't move. Topsy appeared with a vial of Dreamless sleep, which she placed beside Hermione without a word. Hermione was still sitting in the corner beside the bed when the clock down the hall struck midnight and Draco appeared silently in the room. You're still awake? I wanted to know when you came back. She stood up. She stepped closer and buried her face in his robes. It was barely more than a week until the anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts. He rested a tentative hand on her head. She looked at him, watching the way his silver eyes shone in the dim light. She forced herself to manage a wan smile. Come to bed. It's cold without you. A little next day kind of thing, indicating this is another moment. Severus is expected to arrive within the next 6 days, Draco said while they were wandering through the hedge maze. Hermione felt her stomach drop. Oh? She didn't know what to say. She walked blind. Oh, wait, sorry. I just realized what they're talking about. Severus is expected to arrive within the next 6 days. 6 days. Draco said while they were wandering through the hedge maze. Hermione felt her stomach drop. Oh. She didn't know what to say. She walked blindly until she hit a dead end and then stood staring at the wall of yew, swallowing and trying to think of something to say. She finally turned and looked at Draco, standing behind her. Can I go to the library one more time? Just once. I just want to look one more time. Draco stared at her for a moment and nodded. My father is gone for the day. I'll take you. She felt his eyes on her as she wandered from aisle to aisle, as though there was a weight to his gaze. She glanced over at him as she was pulling an encyclopedia of 15th century arithmetic formulas down from the shelf, and her fingers wavered against the spine as she caught sight of his expression. Wistful. To him, she was stealing time from them. If she didn't find anything, it was all just wasted. All that time she could have had with him. Her jaw trembled. She looked down and bit her lip as she slipped the encyclopedia off the shelf, as well as 4 books beside it, adding them to the stack. These 2. Another little indication break. I found what I was missing to remove your dark mark, Hermione said when Draco walked through the door to her room after lunch the next day. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, empty-handed, her meal untouched. He stopped at the door. Oh? The corners of her mouth twitched and she looked down at her hands. I figured it out with arithmetic. I even had Topsy write down all the numbers for me to make sure I'd calculated it right. Her voice was empty. She looked down and her voice trembled before she forced herself to look at Draco. Phoenix tears. I'd be able to remove it if I had a vial of phoenix tears. She might as well have said she needed the moon. Draco stood, staring at her for a minute before he blinked. Phoenixes rarely cried. When they did, it was always over an injury, not into a vial so that the tears could be saved or used in a potion. Trying to buy phoenix tears would cost a fortune, and the buyer would more than likely end up with watered-down unicorn blood. It could take years to manage to track down a seller with actual phoenix tears. She swallowed and fidgeted, rolling the fabric of her robes between her fingers. Maybe if I start over, I can find something. I might have just come at it from the wrong angle. She twitched and her shoulder jerked. Or a bomb. I could build a bomb, like the ones I used at Sussex. She caught her lower lip between her teeth and nodded it. I think I mostly remember how. If you bring me an analysis of the wards on Voldemort's castle, I might be able to design a bomb for them. We could blow it up. Draco's expression was closed, but his gaze was enragingly patient as he walked over to her. Can you build a bomb without magic? Hermione swallowed, and her mouth twisted. No, but I could tell you how. Can you safely handle the materials while pregnant? Her jaw trembled, and she realized this was an idea he'd likely already considered and discarded at some previous point. No, but you could place wards around me. It would mute the effects, and I can show you the techniques beforehand. We could work together. Draco picked up her right hand and pressed his left hand against it. His thumb and index finger both twitched faintly. Hermione's hand spasmed against his. Which of us has hands steady enough to build a bomb? Hermione pulled her hand away, curling into a fist so tight she could feel her metacarpal bones under her fingertips. She could feel the blood draining from her head, and she felt as though she might topple off the edge of the bed. She pressed her other hand firmly against the mattress to steady herself. Maybe I can. Hermione, I'm tired. She looked up into him and saw it in his eyes. The war had eaten him. There was so little of him left. The ghost in his eyes, the war, it was almost all there was. The other Death Eaters had retired from the war after the Battle of Hogwarts, but Draco hadn't had the ability, had never been afforded the luxury. He had continued because he couldn't find her, because he'd made a vow to defeat Voldemort, his best to defeat Voldemort, his best, always his best, day after day, his best. He just wanted an end point to look towards. Draco, he took her hand in his, running his thumb over her ring. I would like to say goodbye to you before you're leaving. Her throat caught as she stared up at him. Her jaw was trembling visibly, and he swam in her eyes when she nodded slowly and buried her face against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her shoulders and sighed. She wrapped her arms around him, but her mind raced. The minute he left, she went back to researching. She asked for more books from the house elves. When he returned in the late evening, she'd put them all away. She didn't mention it. She knew he knew anyways. She kissed him. She pushed him back against the bed and slid her leg up until she was on his lap. Her fingers threaded through his hair as she caressed his lips with hers. She pushed his robes off his shoulders and unbuttoned his shirt, trailing her fingers along his clavicles and following them with her lips. Her hand slipped down his arms. She guided his hands to her waist and then pulled his mouth back to hers. His hands gripped hers. His thumb pressed against her lowest rib, and he arced her against his chest. His other hand rose up and wrapped around her throat, pulling her impossibly close and tilting her head back as he deepened the kiss. She started unbuttoning her dress. Her hands were trembling, and her fingers fumbled with the buttons. He drew back and tried to close his hands over hers, but she jerked them free. I want this, she said in a tight, shaking voice. I want this. I want this on our terms before I go. Her voice wavered. This was ours. She swallowed and blinked hard before meeting his eyes. It was ours. She twitched her shoulders and her dress slipped off and pooled at her waist. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him close and kissing him again. She stayed astride him as they progressed. As things grew warmer and the world around them blurred away, there was nothing but Draco, his hands and eyes, the beating of his heart. She re-explored his body. He was different. He felt damaged in her hands. He had scars she didn't recognize, and his fingers twitched sometimes when he was pulling her closer and trailing his hands across her skin. She laid against the length of his body, relishing the heat of him while his hands traced up the curve of her spine. He nipped along her shoulder until she gave a low moan, and her body shuddered against his. She kissed down his throat and along his collarbones and took note of how he reacted, the way he tensed and his breath caught, the way his fingers twisted in her hair and slid possessively down her throat. Mine. She could feel it in his touch, but he didn't even say it. Mine. His eyes weren't like a wolf's. They were a dragon's, deadly and possessive. He stared at her as though she were all that mattered in the world. It made her blood burn. Her thighs bracketed his hips as he sat astride him and shifted. She met his eyes. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and her pulse was racing, and she knew he could feel it. She drew his hands to her hips as she slowly lowered herself. His eyes turned black and his jaw tensed as he gave a low hiss between his teeth. But he didn't hurry her as she paused and adjusted to the sensation and then rolled her hips forwards. It was familiar in both good ways and bad. Over the table, she tried not to pay attention, not to how it felt, how it touched her inside, the sensation or the movement. She torn her mind away and focused on the bite of the table against her hip bones, the clock, the texture of the wood beneath her fingertips, poetry, potions, anything else. It had always been a matter of experiencing it as little as possible. Now, she wanted to notice what it was like. They were connected. He was in her and under her, his hands guiding her hips as she moved with him. It was good. It had felt this way when they used to have sex. She was certain. The heat of his touch was like fire. It wasn't too fast or too much for her. He went as slow as she needed him to. And it used to be slow. She remembered that. Slow and intimate as he whispered against her skin. The burning reverence of his touch as he used to make love to her. That's what it had been. Making love. That's what they'd had. Her eyes burned and she dropped her head down as her shoulders shook. I love you. She gripped his hand in hers so tightly it hurt. I wanted my whole life to show you. God. That is the end of chapter 68. Oh, Jesus. That is the end of chapter 68. We have one more chapter tonight, which is 69. Oh my gosh. It's so emotionally heavy, it makes me woozy. 69. Okay, we are reading chapter 69 tonight. Okay, here we go, guys. God damn, this fucking book is so beautiful, but god damn it. All right, chapter 69, June 2005. And this is what she's thinking. It's in her mind. Severus is coming. Severus is coming. Hermione felt as though she were turning to lead. There was constant aching pain in her chest, and a stone seemed to be lodged in her throat. She felt it each time she swallowed. A palpable sense of horror and despair spreading around and through her. It was as if she was drowning with the rising tide. The water had reached her face, sliding slowly across her skin, lapping a little higher each time. She was locked in place and could do nothing but sit, feeling it draw over her. She wanted her occlumency back. Now that she remembered having it, it felt like she felt its loss. Death and mutilation, everyone she'd seen die right in the forefront of her mind. It hadn't always been that way. There used to be space from the emotional agony, but now there wasn't. And soon, Draco would be another person who died because she couldn't save him. She didn't think any amount of occlumency would ever make the pain of it fade. If she could just occlude a bit, she thought she'd be able to say everything she felt as she needed to say, to ask him what she wanted to know. Instead, each time she tried to broach the subject, her voice would break, her shoulders would begin shaking, and she'd start crying and then hyperventilating. Draco would stoically let her cry and then wrap his arms around her and calm her when she started over-breathing. She'd jerk away angrily. She wanted to scream at him. Stop accepting this! This is what she wants to say. Stop being resigned. You're breaking my heart. Stop acting like it's all right. It's not all right. It's never going to be all right. Stop being resigned. It was easy to be angry at him. At least she was still trying. He was just going along with it. She finally broke down and raged at him until she had an actual panic attack. It's in her mind. His plans are stupid and selfish. It wasn't fair that he got to die and she was left to live with everything. If he just let her help him rescue Ginny, none of this might have happened. He should have let them work together. If he hadn't been so controlling and not tried to do everything by himself, everything might have been different. He just stood there without a word while she vented it all at him. Oh, she is venting this. I'm sorry. She vented this at him. Good for her. Okay. Until she started hyperventilating and collapsed on the floor with her arm protectively wrapped around her stomach. He shushed her and rubbed circles on her back while she cried and tried to shake him off. Don't do this to me, Draco. Don't do this. Don't. Afterwards, he was called away and she was left to seethe and obsess and realize he was doing it intentionally. He could read her thoughts. He knew the way her mind tilted. Prior to Montague's attack, he'd gone out of his way to needle her and make her hate him. He'd given her a target, something to focus on, a way to channel her stress. If she was angry at him, she was less self-destructive. Her rage dampened her guilt. Then leaving would be easier for her. She didn't want to be managed. She swallowed her anger after that. She didn't want to waste the time she had by being angry. But when she was alone, she wanted to scream and break everything within reach. The manacles physically prevented her from doing anything but cry. She was burning with rage and devastation and guilt without any capacity to channel it. She felt as though it was poisoning her from the inside, as though the emotions were corroding the blood in her veins. She obsessively kept going through all the stacks of books that covered the floor of more than half of her room. If she read them enough times, maybe she'd have a breakthrough. Maybe she might see something she'd overlooked before. When Draco visited, she tried to ignore the fact that she was leaving. He had an unusual amount of availability leading up to the anniversary of the Battle of Hogwarts. Lucius was responsible for hunting, and executions had been placed on hold until the anniversary separation. Draco was able to spend most of his time with her, and she poured herself into him. She wanted every detail of him. They made love several more times. After the first time, it was easier. She was confident that she could handle it, that she could stop if she needed to. She could communicate things to him physically that she struggled to verbalize without crying. She could hold on to him and wish to never let go. He held her in his arms and kissed down her body. He touched and tangled his fingers in her hair. He traced along her neck and shoulders as though he were measuring and memorizing the way she fit in his hands. He'd pushed into her and stared into his eyes, watching the way they flickered and changed color when the pupils dilated. Mine. She felt it like a heartbeat. Mine. To have and to hold. She pulled his lips desperately against hers, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, tangling her fingers in his hair, absorbing the sensation of being with him, the rhythm of his heartbeat with her. For better, for worse, in sickness and in health. She ran her fingers along his rooms, feeling the implacable magic that resided there. She kissed each of his scars, and he kissed hers. They entwined their hands, brushed their noses together, and whispering to each other. They took every moment slowly. They had barely any time left. They didn't want to waste it by rushing. Afterwards, Hermione lay curled up in his arms, her back against his chest. Home. This is what home feels like. God damn it. She took his left hand and pressed it against the swell in her lower pelvis. That's her, she said. Fucking hell. Her throat tightened. I'll probably be able to feel her move within the next month. The book says it feels like fluttering at the beginning. Draco's fingers twitched in her hand, and he pressed a kiss on her bare shoulder. She stared down, studying his hand beneath hers as it splayed across her stomach. It's called quickening, when you first feel a baby move. After lunch, Draco led her past the hedges running along the south wing of the manor. As they walked around the hot house, Hermione stopped with surprise. There was a stable of winged horses on the Malfoy estate. She stood speechless at the doors and stared She stood speechless at the doors and stared in at them, all of them. Enormous Abraxans, Granians, and Athenians, all of which stared down at her and Draco through barred stalls. They stomped their hoods and tossed their heads, nickering as Hermione ventured forward. She reached up and a dainty Granian fluttered its smoky wings and shoved his nose through the bars, nuzzling against Hermione's palm. "I didn't know you had horses," she said as she stroked its muzzle and scratched its ears. I thought I'd explored most of the estate near the manor. I don't know how I didn't notice the stables." Draco was oddly quiet. She turned to look at him. He had an unreadable expression on his face as he studied her. He tilted his head and seemed to be hesitating for several seconds. "You did know about them." His eyes dropped. "You used to come here daily during the winter. You stopped at the end of February." Hermione stared at Draco, her fingers twitching against the Granian's neck. The horse nearly knocked her over as it nosed at her robes. She turned back and scratched at the swirl on its forehead while trying to wrap her mind around this revelation. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She swallowed and cleared her throat several times. "Oh," she finally managed to say in a light voice after standing and smoothing the Granian's mane so it would lie flat. Her nose and eyes were burning from the dust and the sickly sweet scent of hay. After a minute, she nodded. "That makes sense." She nodded again and cleared her throat. I think I lost a few memories. I think during my first seizure." She kept fussing over the horse without looking back towards Draco. It's so interesting how memories work. There are probably a lot of things I don't even know I can't remember. She had trouble thinking what to say. "It must be very odd to watch." "I don't think it was your seizure," Draco said from behind her. "It's something the Dark Lord does. A legamancy technique, I suppose you could say. He tears apart memories. He's talked about the method in the past. Little pieces of things, he takes them and shreds them apart. He enjoys feeling the mental anguish the victims experience when they lose the memories." There was a pause. "Coming here used to make you happy, so he took it from you." Draco summoned several apples from a bin nearby and sliced off a piece, handing it to Hermione. Hermione laid it on the flat of her palm and held it up. The Granian's muzzle brushed and tickled against her skin as it huffed and ate. "Were there other things?" she asked. "Other things I don't remember forgetting?" "You had a memory of your father. He told you to fold 1,000 paper cranes to get a wish. That was all I knew of." Hermione stood, feeling cold as she absorbed it. "I wondered why I did that." Several more horses pushed their heads through the bars of their stalls and tossed them up and down until Hermione moved from horse to horse, petting their noses while she bribed them into quietude with apple slices. She could feel Draco watching her, and it made her stomach knot as she tried to calculate why he'd brought her there. So, Why do I need to know about the horses? She asked as she scratched the ears of the Abraxan, whose head was the size of an elephant's. Jesus. Draco handed her another apple slice before he answered. With sufficient... I have to sneeze, I'm sorry. Phew! 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 Oh, jeez. With sufficient resources, portkeys and apparition leave traceable signatures. Apparitions and brooms don't go far enough, fast enough. Cranians fly faster than any other magical creature. You'll be flying horseback from the manor to Denmark. There's a safe house there with an international portkey. It will take you to Ginny. Thank you. Hermione nodded again, withdrawing from the horse and walking past Draco without a word. Of course, it was just another step towards her departure. It seemed like everything he did was just an additional phase in his goodbye process. They were heading back to the manor when Draco stiffened and froze, his expression becoming a mixture of disbelief and rage. Hermione stared up at him nervously. Lucius. Astoria has just apparated into the foyer, he said. A feeling of cold washed over Hermione. Compared to Lucius, Astoria was a minor inconvenience, but the combination of both of them was horribly timed. Ill-timed. Draco scoffed and looked heavenward. Why is it that nothing ever goes wrong by halves? He stood for several seconds with his eyes unfocused. When they had cleared, he snorted angrily. Yet another person I'll have to deal with. His hand strayed towards his wand holster as he stalked towards the manor, the gravel crunching loudly under his shoes. Hermione followed him, and a sinking sensation came over her as it occurred to her that Draco had likely been expecting to have to kill Lucius ever since his father's return. And now Astoria was on that list as well. In the case of Astoria, it was not surprising, but Draco had protected his father over the years. Hermione was certain of it. It would have been far easier for Draco to have orchestrated Lucius's death at some point than to account for his father's constant unpredictability. Draco paused in the rose gardens and scowls. She's headed to the veranda to meet us. He rolled his neck so that it cracked, straightening as his expression schooled itself into one indolent viciousness. He sauntered around the corner of the manor, Hermione following a few subservient steps behind him. Astoria was waiting for them, her hands on her hips. The corner of Astoria's mouth twisted upwards as she stared down the steps at Draco and Hermione. She twitched a thin shoulder. How did I guess I'd find you two out here together? I imagine you asked a house elf, Draco said as he ascended the steps and looked her over coolly. I thought you were spending the summer in France, Astoria. Did they cast you out? Astoria's lips curled so that her teeth were briefly bared as she raised her chin. I'm here for the celebration. You're going to be the guest of honor. Do you realize how much people will talk if your wife doesn't attend with you? Draco raised his eyebrows skeptically, and Astoria glanced over at Hermione. What? Were you going to take her? Sit on your lap and fondle her publicly the way Amicus does with his? She rolled her eyes. No, that's hardly your style. You can't keep her under a mountain of wards if she's let out in public. Astoria tossed her head. I'm not required to get permission to return to my own home. I'm here to appear beside my beloved husband. People are beginning to talk. Astoria's expression was growing pinched, and her lips pursed briefly as she stared resentfully up at Draco. Not that you ever pay attention, but they do talk about you so very much. Her voice was saccharine. I find myself unable to do anything but answer the endless questions about you when I go out. They all want to know when you'll visit me. She gave a laugh like shattering glass. Adrian joked at a party that you've been staying here in England because your paternal side is starting to come out. And then the whole room laughed because everyone knows the only thing you do is kill things. Draco's mouth corked at the corner. Well, I'll be rather busy for most of it. You'll spend most of the event with my father. I don't believe you two are acquainted. Astoria's brittle expression rippled as a flash of uncertainty appeared on her face. Really? Lucius. He's back in Britain? Then her expression sharpened and she glared at Hermione. Because of her? Draco followed his wife's gaze and stared at Hermione with hardened eyes. Hardly. The Dark Lord has recalled him to assume some of my duties now that my new status has so many demands upon my time. Draco's mouth twisted into a mocking smirk. He's a touch eccentric now, my father. You both share certain interests. Perhaps he'll like you. He shrugged and looked Astoria over once more again before summoning Hermione up the steps with a quick movement of his hand. Do keep out of the way, Astoria, if you possibly can. He started towards the doors, and Hermione followed him, trying not to make eye contact with Astoria. As Hermione passed, Astoria spoke up in a low voice. He's going to kill you. Hermione froze briefly, and Astoria continued. Didn't you know? You're dead. As soon as that baby's out of your belly, the Dark Lord wants your corpse. I hope he does something foul with it. Astoria? Didn't I say something a few months ago talking to the mudblood? Draco drawled dangerously from the doorway. Astoria paled and stepped back. Mudblood? Draco's voice was sharp as a blade. Come before I drag you. Hermione continued towards Draco, feeling Astoria's eyes on her back. When they got inside her room, Hermione drew a deep breath and turned, folding her arms tightly around herself. Tell me the whole plan. I need to know. I need you to tell me the whole plan. Draco closed the door firmly and stood in front of it, his eyes calculating as he stared at her. After a moment, he looked down and straightened his cuffs. Assuming Severus doesn't arrive late, you'll leave before the anniversary celebration. It will destabilize things more rapidly if I fail to appear during the event. It's intended to be a show of strength. The Dark Lord will be hard-pressed to excuse my absence. He waved his hand dismissively. But that's all beside the point. Once your manacles are off, you and Severus will immediately fly to Denmark. He knows the location of the safe house. When you've taken to the portkey, he'll return. If things go according to plan, his disappearance will have been unnoticed, and he'll remain in place as long as he can. Hermione twitched. What about you? She felt as though she were being crushed to death. After I leave, what happens to you? His mouth curved into a thin smile. I'll be making sure no one notices that Severus has gone missing for half a day. I'll make an appearance of having tried to run with you and leave another Death Eater to be found. Who will be assumed to be the secondary party involved? He sighed. It was supposed to be Montague, given his own fascination with you, but there are other options I have in mind now. He shrugged. It's a minor detail either way. What happens to you? Hermione said again. He met her gaze seriously. I won't be captured, if that's what you're worrying about. I have too much information to risk interrogation. He glanced down and appeared to be inspecting the polish on his toe shoes. Don't worry. It'll be quick. He looked up at her with a faint smile. I'm rather good at making it quick. Hermione's mouth twisted, and she turned away and went over to the window. She thought she'd run out of tears during her imprisonment beneath Hogwarts, but now she found herself constantly fighting them back. She could feel him walking up behind her until his robes brushed against hers. She pressed her hand against the window and stared despairingly out across the estate. It was a cage. The open sky and rolling hills were an illusion of freedom. In all the time she'd known him and been his prisoner, he'd been more chained in place than she was. I cannot emphasize how important that is. In all the time she'd known him and been his prisoner, He'd been more chained in place than she was. I don't want you to die, Draco. His left hand slipped around her waist and rested against her lower abdomen. She pressed her lips together, but her jaw still trembled. Draco. Her mouth twisted and her cheekbones felt hollow and ached. There was a shriveling sense of despair in her chest. She dropped her forehead against the cold glass. Don't. I don't want you to die. I know. He slipped his other arm around her shoulders, and she pressed her cheek against the back of his hand. She gripped the hand over her abdomen, and they stood in silence until he sighed and strained. I have to go. With Astoria here too, it's not worth the additional risk. Hermione looked down at the floor and nodded, her throat catching with guilt. They'd had less than a month, and she'd spent it researching. Now, the little bit of time left was cut short. He withdrew his hands, and she felt him vanish. He still came that night. After the lights in the manor were out, he appeared in her room. Well, my father and Astoria have met. He rolled his jaw as he pulled off his outer formal robes. He likes her even less than I'd expected. I suppose it would be more unfortunate if they seemed to like each other, but the antagonism over dinner was tedious in a matter of minutes. The corner of his mouth quirked upwards for a moment before his expression closed again. You can be here now? She asked after a moment. He nodded. I'll know if they come to my door. It's most likely would be my father wanting a drinking partner than Astoria expecting to share my bed. He seated himself on the edge of the mattress. Hermione twitched slightly and looked down at her hands. Astoria's return to the manor placed a certain emphasis on Draco's presence beside Hermione in bed. He was married. He had a wife. Yet here he was in Hermione's bed because she was his mistress? Or a sex slave? I mean, that was her intended function as a surrogate and a sex slave. Disregarding her imprisonment, she was still categorically his mistress. She looked up to find Draco studying her and forced a smile. No, I don't suppose she will. They slept face to face. He held her almost crushed against his chest, and she could feel his heart beat against her cheek. He sat up in the middle of the night. My father's wandering the manor, was all he said before he apparated away without a sound. He didn't reappear until after lunch to walk Hermione. He was visibly tense and didn't make any effort to converse as they strolled through the gardens. There was an additional sense of dread seated low in her stomach as they walked along the blooming roses. He kept scanning their surroundings and eyeing the manor as though he expected an explosion to emanate from it at any moment. Draco! Astoria's sharp voice cut through the air. The corner of Draco's mouth twitched as he turned to meet his approaching wife. Astoria was pale-faced, but the hollows of her cheeks were stained red. She stormed through the garden beds. She was impeccably attired in pale green robes splashed with scarlet detailing. As she got closer, Hermione noticed that the hem of her shoes were scarlet red as well. Draco, this is unacceptable! Astoria appeared to be on the verge of tears and nearly at a loss of words. Intolerable, obscene, I don't even... When she was within a few feet, Hermione realized Astoria's robes were not detailed with red. They were spattered and stained, as though she'd walked into a pool of blood. What is it, Astoria? Draco drawled the question. Astoria stood before Draco for several seconds, swallowing visibly. She looked down at her robes and back up at him. Your father has to go. He cannot stay here, she choked. He. She gestured down at herself. The entire foyer is covered in blood. There were things hanging from the chandelier. Intestines, I think. It's on the portraits and all the orchids I brought back from France. And on my new robes. The whole room is ruined. Miss Thickenese was supposed to come with tea with her daughters and several other ladies planning for the celebration. Now I'm going to have to cancel because most of the house is smeared with blood, and Bobbin says there are corpses piled by the gate. Make him go! Hermione had barely been in the other wings of the manor since Lucius's arrival. She had no idea if what Astoria was saying was true or if she was exaggerating. Hermione was certain Draco had added wards to her room after the day Lucius brought back the centaur. She could no longer hear any sounds through the doors or the windows. She'd seen blood-stained drag marks outside occasionally when she and Draco walked, but once inside her bedroom walls, she was nearly oblivious to the world outside. Draco sighed and straightened his robes. Astoria, it's traditional for him to live on the estate. He has a private wing of the manor. Astoria threw her hands into the air. He's not using his wing! He's using the main gates and the main entrance. There's blood all over the gravel. I had the elves replace it all this morning, and it's already covered again. The manor looks like a slaughterhouse. Draco nodded, his expression impassive. I am aware of the condition of the manor. There are reasons I didn't ask you to return for the celebration. If you insist on attending, there are other properties in Britain you can occupy for the next several days. Astoria stared up at Draco, her eyes wide and incredulous. Do you know how much people will talk if I'm receiving guests somewhere besides Malfoy Manor? Draco quirked an eyebrow and met her gaze coldly. I didn't ask you to come, Astoria. He's in England on the Dark Lord's orders. You're here on a whim. Do you expect me to defer to your preferences? Astoria started to respond, but before she could speak. What is this? All my family together in one place? How joyous. Lucius had seemingly materialized from nowhere. Astoria shrank towards Draco, who shifted away from her in order to place himself between his father's line of sight and Hermione. The movement was slight, as though he were simply turning to see Lucius, but Hermione was nearly concealed after he'd altered his stance. Father Astoria is dismayed by the condition of the foyer. Really? Lucius cooed the word as though he were speaking to a small child. I thought it was a considerable improvement over the barren minimalism she appears so partial to. Astoria was visible to Draco's right, and Hermione saw her pale. Her hands moved defensively towards her stomach, and then stopped as she curled them in fists at her side. I want you to leave, she said in a sharp voice. Her earrings were trembling, and she lifted her chin. I want you off the estate! Lucius quirked an eyebrow and stared down his nose at her. Indeed, you intend to banish me from my own estate? It's not your estate. It's Draco's. It's mine. I am lady of the manor, and you are a guest who has abused his welcome. You are a lady of this manor? Lucius purred in a low voice. My wife was lady of Malfoy Manor. I'm not sure the magic can tolerate such an inadequate replacement. Astoria flushed. The hollows of her cheeks stained scarlet as her teeth flashed angrily. It doesn't matter what you think. The Dark Lord chose me. Draco married me. I am the lady of Malfoy Manor. You aren't the one who gets to decide. I have done everything that has been asked of me. I lived alone in this horrible house. I fulfilled every role expected. I did everything asked. I never complained, even when I was taken for granted and then put aside and ignored. Astoria sounded on the verge of tears. I still played my part without a word of complaint because you do like to carry on, don't you? Lucius sneered at Astoria. Perhaps we'd pay more attention to you if you were quieter. I haven't heard a sound from the mudblood since I arrived. Draco's hand twitched infinitesimally back towards Hermione. Get off the estate! Astoria nearly shrieked. Get off! Get off! Get off! A razor-fine line of scarlet suddenly bloomed across the pale skin of Astoria's neck. Hermione watched, eyes wide with horror. A sort of gasping, burbling sound emerged from Astoria's throat as her head toppled off her shoulders and her body sank to the ground. Ooh. Lucius stared down at the fresh corpse at his feet, and his eyebrows arched approvingly. "You're much quieter now," he said, bending over and cocking his head at Astoria's face, where it lay in the white gravel. His expression had gone limp and blank. Her expression had gone limp and blank. Lucius wagged a finger towards her. "Stay like this, and in time, perhaps my opinion of you shall improve." Hermione peered around Draco in shock. I forgot about this too. Lucius straightened, sighing, and tilted his head back in the sunlight. The estate feels much better already. My father used to say there's nothing like flesh blood to fertilize the roses. "You killed my wife, father," Draco said. She couldn't see his face, but his voice was disbelieving. "I am aware." Lucius snorted, and he looked at Draco from the corner of his eyes. "Don't bother trying to convince me that you'll miss her. She was tasteless and indiscreet. Now you can marry a woman capable of producing an heir. Did I tell you about the delightful young witch I met in Bulgaria this last winter? Pure-blooded. Only 16. But she'll be of age once your obligatory period of mourning has elapsed. Then we'll no longer be obliged to sully our line by having mudblood paraded through the manor like a line of whores." Draco's fingers twitched and his shoulders grew rigid. "You realize I'd require permission to remarry." "Indeed. Something more easily obtained when you don't already have a wife and surrogate on hand. In 6 months' time, when the Dark Lord has the information he desires and the mudblood is dead, things will be different. Someone has to worry over the future, given that you refuse to." Draco shook his head and ran his hand through his hair. "You can hardly expect this to go unpunished. The Dark Lord requires that he personally approve killing any members of the Sacred 28 prior to their execution." Astoria blood was seeping across the grounds towards Draco's shoes. He flicked his wand and vanished it. Lucius twirled his wand lazily in his fingers. "I doubt the Dark Lord will mourn the loss of an infertile witch, regardless of her pedigree. Your value and mine remain considerably greater than hers. Once he hears how incessantly she talked, I expect I shall get off quite lightly." Lucius knelt down easily and plucked Astoria's head up off the ground before snagging the arm of her corpse. "Worry not. I shall assure the Dark Lord that you are deeply grieved by my impulsiveness. You may hope otherwise, but I would advise you to expect my return within the hour. If you are still my obedient son, perhaps you will be so good as to have a pain relief potion ready for me." Without another word, Lucius apparated away, taking Astoria with him. Draco stood staring at the blood-stained gravel for several seconds before he turned to look at Hermione. His expression was masked. Hermione stared up at him for several seconds, studying his eyes. Her chest was starting to ache. She drew a deep breath before she spoke. "You planned that?" He didn't react for a moment. Then the corner of his mouth curled up. "Clever." Hermione didn't smile back. After a moment, his eyes flashed, his expression hardening as he looked away. "What did you expect, Granger? You can't possibly be surprised." He scoffed and his nostrils flared. "She attacked you. She tried to gouge your eyes out." Her throat hurt, and she twitched as she remembered the sensation of Astoria's wand digging into her eyeball and her utter terror when she thought she'd be blinded. "I haven't forgotten." Draco gave a short laugh. "I would have killed her sooner, but it diverted suspicion to have a pretty wife in the manor. Living here alone with you for so many months could have attracted attention. That was the only reason I let her live." "I hate it when you kill people because of me," she said, turning sharply in the gravel so that it could ground beneath her feet. She stared down at the blood-stained ground, her mouth twisting. "I hate it. I've always hated it. There's so much more to you. But sometimes I feel like all I do is bring out the worst in you. You would never go so far if it weren't for me. You wouldn't be like this. I did this to you. Draco was silent for several seconds, and he sighed. You're right. I don't imagine I would. Hermione pressed her hand against her sternum. Her head felt light and hollow, and her chest ached as though she'd been struck, as though the bones were shattered and the shards were slowly cutting her to death. I used to have so many dreams for us, she said, her voice thick. When I'd worry about you, when I'd do things I didn't want to do, when the war felt so heavy, I thought I'd finally break under it. I'd tell myself, someday you're going to run away with him. You'll go somewhere quiet. You won't ask for very much. Just you and him. And that will be enough. That's what I used to tell myself. I wanted to see what you'd be like away from the war. I thought maybe we'd find out together who we could be without the war. She smiled bitterly. I suppose in the end, I'm just like Harry and Ron. I expect the universe to eventually give in a bit. I thought we earned each other. I thought we both suffered enough that we'd get to have each other. Draco was silent. She looked toward the manor. I want to go back to my room now. I barely have any time left. I don't want to spend it in this rose garden, standing in your wife's blood. She started walking towards the house and froze, her thought closing when she realized she couldn't see Draco anymore. She turned sharply back and stood, staring at him for several seconds while her chest jerked. She felt hollow. She poured herself out, and now all she had left was a shell. How am I supposed to do this without you? Her voice was shaking. She raised her hands and then let them drop limply at her sides. I can't even go outside by myself. What's even the point in having me escape? I might have a seizure if I go without you. Draco's expression was guarded, but his eyes flickered and the line of his mouth tensed. You'll have your occupancy back. That should help. Hermione stared at him, and he glanced away. I'll have streamless sleep you can take, if necessary. Severus is aware of your agoraphobia, and he's planned accordingly. You'll share a horse. He's someone you trusted. Hermione released a sharp, angry breath. Why are you so resigned to dying? Even at the beginning, when you made your offer to the Order, you were always planning to die like it wouldn't matter to anyone. Why are you still like that? Now, her voice broke, when it does. Draco sighed, and his mouth twisted briefly as he met her eyes. He set his jaw and glanced away, his lips twitching. I didn't have anyone, Granger. After my mother died, I didn't have anyone. My life was blown apart when I returned home after 5th year. Everything I did after that was trying not to lose the remaining pieces that I had. Once she died, it didn't matter. Revenge was all I could do to make up for it. And it didn't matter to anyone. He looked down. Not until you came along. He sounded almost bitter. He met her eyes and walked across the bloodstained gravel towards her. I didn't make plans past the war. Potter was never going to win. I always knew that. Falling for you didn't change that. It just... He released a sharp breath and looked down, his voice growing quieter. It just made knowing it worse. His throat dipped and he swallowed and stared at her, and his mouth curved into a wistful smile. I love how you believed in the future, even when you didn't expect you'd get to be a part of it. How you insisted we'd somehow defy the inevitable. You Gryffindors are such idealists. I never understood the appeal of it until you. He reached out and caught a curl in his fingers. The way you thought we'd always be together, and talked about running away almost until the end. I would have done anything to give you what you wanted. But He gave a short laugh and shook his head as he dropped away from her. I don't know how to do it. It's not for the lack of trying, Granger. I've run out of ideas. Hermione drew a low breath. The summer heat had mixed the coppery scent of blood with the honey-sweet scent of blooming roses. When the smell struck her, her tongue curdled and a wave of nauseous despair crawled up her throat. She pressed the back of her hand against her nose and turned away. I want to go back inside, she said after she forced away the urge to vomit. Draco took her hand, and she dully let him lead her back into the manor. Shortly after they arrived in her room, Draco was summoned. He conjured his Death Eater robes and vanished without a word. He didn't return for hours. Something was wrong. Hermione called Topsy, who appeared and informed her that Lucius had not returned either. Hermione paced in her room, reviewing possibilities. Voldemort was upset over Astoria's death. Voldemort used legacy on Lucius and noticed something that had betrayed Draco. Something else had gone wrong that Hermione was too oblivious to guess. She hovered at the door, but there was no point in going out. There was nothing she could do. So she just kept waiting. She was standing by the window and the back of her neck prickled, and she turned. Draco was standing in the middle of the room, pulling his mask off. He had an unreadable expression on his face, as though he were shocked and devastated. His hair, skin, and eyes stood out starkly in the dark room, making him almost look luminous. He stared at her for several seconds. The Dark Lord just received word. Romania has severed their alliance with the Dark Lord. They deposed the government and killed the Dark Lord's emissary, including Severus. Fuck. 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 Addie, I swear all of this, I don't remember any of this. Severus has been severed. Okay, we just finished chapter 69. So first of all, I am so sorry, Andy. Not only am I leaving you here with this, your next 2 episodes are going direct to YouTube. So we won't even be able to fucking go through the rigmarole we're about to go through together. So if you're not in Discord, get in the Discord. Get on to the Good Girls Club. Catch up with all the past episodes. The next 2 episodes are going to be dropped. Let me give you the exact date so you know. The next 2 episodes are going to be dropped direct to YouTube while Aiden and I are in Europe on the November 1st and November 8th. So I am absolutely sure, Addie. No, because now you guys are going to be chomping. And honestly, let me tell you why. We actually don't have that much left. And I'm getting a little bit nervous that, like, we're going to get really deep into this while we're not together. Like, we really don't have that much left. Like, that's how much we have left. I think there's like 100 pages left. And it seems like each section of the chapters are 30 pages. So you guys are going to get 60 pages while we're gone at minimum, which means there's probably only like maybe, I'm guessing anywhere from like 2 to maybe 6 chapters left after that. So I don't want to get too deep while we're not together, because trust me, shit's about to be real. And I like leaving you on a cliffhanger because then you're going to go watch it on YouTube anyways. So first of all, let me just tell you something. I did not remember the death of Astoria at all. That shocked me. Like, the first time I fucking read it, I completely forgot about her. And I gotta be honest, I forgot about Severus dying too. I fucking forgot. Yeah. So that was like me reading it for the first time. How long is the next chapter? Okay, let me see. Each one has seemingly been about 20 pages. So let's see. If it's a short one, maybe I'll do it. But let me see. They've been thick. Oh, guys. Oh, it's 20 pages. It's another, I told you. Oh, that means if that one's 20, then we're probably going to get 40. Oh, God. Oh, God. Shit, the right, fuck. Okay, so what are we, all the better to read another? No, we need to know how many chapters left. I don't actually know. How many chapters are left? Read it. Oh, my God. Okay, so let's talk. Just keep going. It's 20 more pages though. Like, it's another hour. So listen. I want to talk to you about a couple of things because I think a big thing is a lot of pages. If it was only like 5 to 10 more, it's another 20. Let's talk about this because a lot happens in here. I want to know a couple things because I don't remember if it was Dueling Needles or Darius. I don't remember. But there was a theory about Lucius being like maybe a good guy. I want to know if that changed, if that opinion changed. I also want to know your thoughts on what was the other thing? How there's really they're really trying to drive home. Because that's one of the beautiful things about Manacled, in my opinion, is this driving home that even though we're supposed to think Draco is the, and he is. He's morally gray, right? He's complicated. But fucking Hermione is too, goddammit. And I really want to drive that home because that line I think is so important. That while Hermione has been imprisoned in a cage, he's been even worse. Like he's been imprisoned and even worse because he's been imprisoned to Hermione and he's still the butt boy of Voldemort. He hasn't been able to stop when everyone else, after the war of the great defeat of the good guys, right? Everyone else, a lot of other Death Eaters retired. He couldn't. He did a vow to the Order of Phoenix and to Hermione that he had to do his best every day. Can you imagine? He has to do his best every day. That means that he can't stop for a day. For years. Like, do you know, like, that's insane. And I really like that it's not going unnoticed. It's like, I think that the trauma that we see and endure as Hermione's POV is obviously horrible. He's endured too. Terribly. He's endured terribly. And in this chapter, basically we get Lucius groping Hermione, terrible. We find out the plan, which is, the grand plan that we'll find out if it happens. Astoria gets beheaded by Lucius impulsively. That's crazy. We also have they finally make love again, which I also think is important because I think a lot of other books just gloss over trauma. That was not glossed over. And we also find out that Severus was killed in Romania and that the Romanians have overthrown the Dark Lord, which is interesting. That's also interesting. I know it gets overlapped by the fact that Severus gets fucking killed, but that's interesting too. Another hour. No. What if we just read a few more pages? It won't help. No one to do the unbreakable bond. Would you really want to make this puppy cry? Look at this puppy. That was Dueling Needles. I know Lucius fucking mad as evil. Twist fucked up hater. Wondering if Dumbledore's Phoenix is still alive. That bird would share tears. I forgot about that. Also, that Hermione deduced that you need Phoenix tears. I thought was also very important. I thought that was also very, very important. I do think that we are going to keep moving through this. And reminder, this is a very complex, nuanced story. And you're just going to have to hold on. Because I feel like my employer requires the same for me. God, I hope not. I will say, I do really think that, I feel like it's going to end too soon. Dueling Needles, I feel like, we're getting very close, and that's why it's starting to feel like the chapters as we read, things are this is actually an excellent place to stop, and I'll tell you why. Things are about to explode. Things are about to take off. Like, shit's about to be real. And there is, until the very end of Manacled, I really do feel like this is the point where we're about to snowball out until the bitter end. So, yeah. It should be interesting. So I don't think we have that much left. I will at least let you guys know how many pages we have left total. I don't know how many chapters we have left, but we are on a page 101 and there are 262 pages. So we have like what, 160 pages left. That is, I don't know how to do math, but let's just say on average every chapter is 20 pages. What's 162 divided by 20? 20? I don't know what I just did. Okay, forget it. I don't know what math that even just was. I don't even know what math that was. I can't hold on. I'm gonna fall. Okay, we're about to read 100 pages. Oh my god. There's 5 more chapters. 5. There's only, so wait, is that true? Is there only 5? Hi, a date night in, and then 3 epilogues. Okay, so if that's true, and there's only 5 chapters actually remaining, that means that the next 2 chapters are. Okay, let's end this episode and then let's discuss maybe the next 2 chapters. The next 2 episodes, I only read 1 chapter. I think that might be a better plan. I do not want to finish out most of this story without you guys. So let's end this chapter. Let's end this episode and then we'll discuss maybe instead of 2 chapters in the direct to YouTube, we'll just do 1. And then we'll have more to read when we get back together. So let's end this and we'll discuss. We're really almost there, guys. Okay, I love you. Thank you for watching this episode of Manacled and the Good Girls Club. The next 2 episodes, regardless of how long they will be, are both going to be direct to YouTube. So make sure you're in the YouTube. Subscribe, get over there. I will also make sure to tag you in Discord so you could go check. But, all right, I love you guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all being here. Thank you for the follows. I'm so grateful. And I'll see you on the other side, baby.
I can't put it down, it's my new addiction. It's all in my head, but I want non-fiction. I don't like the world, but I like fantasy. Fairies, fucking girls, and they're pretty. Hailey, do you like to read? I wrote this so you'd sleep with me. It's like 199 degrees. When I go to the smart hut, SMUTHUT, all this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT, throbbing, swelling, pulsing, peen. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT, SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. I wake up alone staring at my ceiling. I try not to care, so I just start reading. Sits in the cup chair, he watches me finish. He just likes to stare, and my god, he's British. Jobs to satisfy his needs. Those man bets I just wanna squeeze. Feels like I'm gonna sneeze. Squid isn't pee-pee, won't somebody breed me? SMUTHUT, all this filth I've gotta read. Mass men crossing boundaries brings me to my fucking knees. SMUTHUT, throbbing, swelling, pulsing, peen. Big fat tits stick in between. SMUTHUT, SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. SMUTHUT. Draco fucked Hermione. Yes he did, he fucked her real nice. Yes he did, he fucked her twice. Yes he did, he fucked her a lot. He fucked in the shadow.